Tallulah and this is my vlog. Welcome, ladies and gentlemen. Bonjour, loulou. This is, I think, called a kame, and it makes one think of classic things, darling. And it's nice to sometimes think of muses and playing the harp. If you are a professional harpist, good luck, darling. I mean, there are certain professions that must be tricky to carry on getting paid. I mean, though maybe one wants a harpist. Yeah, well, listen. I know, there used to be harpists at weddings, and that was a lovely thing to think of harps and Shakespeare and sonnets and such. Let's bring back the harp. I may start a movement, darling. Bring back the harpists. Anyway, harpists aside, what we are talking about today, darling, now this is a question from Richard Goldman, currently residing in the far eastern bit of America, but he has a question, oddly enough, about Florida. How to handle the humidity of Florida summer, how to counteract the humidity of a Floridian summer. He must be planning his summer holidays already and getting worried about the air quality. As one should, Richard, very good to be that prepared. So, now I'm going to tell you something that may sound a little extreme, but I think you'll probably thank me for it in the end, Richard, when you're not sweating. Take your mind back to a lot of those films that were very popular in the 1930s, 40s and 50s, possibly even the 60s, when somebody jumped out of a birthday cake to sing happy birthday to a lucky person. So I'm suggesting, Richard, that you make yourself an almighty big sponge cake. You make so much sponge cake, obviously you're going to need to surround yourself with big pans to put it all in the pans. I don't mean, obviously, you're going to have to think about this. You're going to have to measure how tall you are and then work out how many deep dish circular pans you're going to need. I actually don't know why it needs to be circular. You could do rectangular, Richard, if you want to experiment with the giant cake type thing. And then get sheet cake. So basically you're making lots and lots of sheet cakes. So work out, if you're 6 foot, how many sheet cakes you'll need to make. And then make all them with sponge, because the thing is, Richard, sponge is absorbent. I mean, the very word sponge says absorbency. I mean, even the deep creatures of the sea know all about that. That's why there are sponges in the deep bottom of the blue sea. So you get as much sponge cake as you can and surround yourself with, you might need help, because there's going to be a point where the sponge cake is up to your sort of waist. It's going to be hard for you to get in and out of your sponge cake to keep layering it up. But what you want, Richard, is it to be even over your head. I'm not suggesting you suffocate yourself with sponge. So I'm suggesting that you allow yourself a couple of inches between your face and the actual edge of this. What you're going to need to do, actually, when you get up to the head bit, now that I'm thinking on the spot, is make sure that you cut around your head within the sponge. You know, so it's sort of surrounding you like a bit like a mummy. Essentially, that's what you're doing, Richard. As if you're mummying yourself up with bandage, but this time you're doing it with sponge cake, and you get into that, and once you're really right at the top, I would just stay there, very still, for as long as you can manage. And then maybe, actually, so that you don't need to make a new sponge cake every day, because that could be quite taxing on your time on your holiday. You might just want a little top that comes up, you know, like on a tank. You know, in a tank, people come out of a tank just by opening a little hatch and they stick their head out and then they hoist themselves. So you're going to want that on your sponge cake, just a little top of the bit off. Now you might need a ladder to prop up against the sponge cake so that you can top yourself off. You're going to have to work on your core muscles, I would say, so you can try and propel yourself up like a rocket, really. Once you get off, then you can sort of leverage yourself up out of the top of the cake and then grab hold of the ladder and shimmy your way down. I wouldn't come out until night time though. Hopefully it's less humid at night. So I'd spend your daylight hours inside your sponge cake, Richard. I mean, that's the best that I can come up with under quite short notice from your question. I don't want you to be caught sweating and humid or humiliated. Another H word in there that I wouldn't want you to be. And there you go. I should put the recipe down below for sponge cake because it's quite complicated. Obviously, there's more than just a few ingredients in that. But I would keep it quite simple because obviously it's not going to be eaten. There's no point putting in, you know, fresh vanilla bean and whatnot. I would save that for another day, Richard. And there you go. Bon appétit et bonne chance en Florida.